Now, in order to print larger than what your printer pages allow, what you can do and what I always do is convert first the image to a PDF. And there's lots of different free ones online, but Adobe has its own, and I trust Adobe, so why not? But I do it in Photoshop. So I'll just go through the motions in case you don't know. You just save it as a PDF. You can just click through these settings generally, unless you need to make any tweaks. And then you go into your new file and open it. And then you go to your print. And I'm just going to print it to my regular printer for now, just for the sake of this tutorial. Now, I currently have 8.5 by 11 paper in my printer. If you have that, that makes it a lot easier because you can get more print on each page. But if you happen to only have 8.5 by 11, that's fine too. You'll just end up maybe having more pages. So what I want to do first is make sure that I have the printer set for the right size paper, which I already do. And then you'll want to go in and instead of printing by regular size, you would go to print by poster and then you would make it the size that you actually want it. So in this case, I already have the design to fit on 2 pieces of paper. It would normally just fit on one anyways. But for the purposes of this, we'll say that we're going to make it larger and we'll make it by, let's say, 200% larger. And that gets us at the paper amount here is 25.5 by 28 inches. The design is in here and it shows you what it will look like when you print it out. Now, I often like to change the overlap to give me room to actually overlap a little bit when I'm actually putting the pages together, which you'll see afterwards. But basically, it just prints out a little bit more of the paper on the paper so that it's easy to line up. I'm going to go ahead and print this, but I'm going to, just for the purposes of this, change it to draft setting. And it'll print out and I'll be right back. So I have everything printed out now. And the first thing you'll want to do is kind of like piece it together, just very roughly. And then you also need to decide where it is you want to start your cuts. So when you print with PDFs, you get little registration marks as to where to cut. And I leave a band to make it easier to overlap things. So what you need to figure out first is which side of the paper you want to cut the little guide off, and the side or the tops or the bottoms. So for this one, I think I'm going to cut off the right side of each paper, and then I'll cut off the tops of these to line them all together. So the first thing that I'll do though is, because my papers won't fit into my slicer, is I'll just line them all up and do a little snippet off the top. Okay, so my phone died while I was snipping, but that's okay. I was just going to fast forward through that anyways. Okay, so I'm just using regular tape today. And so you can see that I cut right off the lines there. And I'm just going to line things up. So what I do first is line it up so you don't see any white underneath and that everything lines up. So if you were to tape it like that, there wouldn't be any ink there when you're pressing it. So you have to make sure that it's all lined up. And then what I do is where there's still just blank paper but not on your image is where I tape first, because then when you flip it over, it just makes it easier. You don't have to worry about any mess up. So I've got a little bit of a white here left, so I am just going to snip a little bit of that off. You want to be careful not to get too much of your image off, but you do have some overlap, so there we go. And then you line up the next one. And I've got a little bit of a jagged edge there. That would show in the print. For this case, it's not that big of a deal because it's just for trial purposes. and then I tape that there. Then I'll do that also for the bottom. Like as you can see, you might be able to see there's a little bit of white there. So I just make sure it's lined up, and again, tape at the top. Now, I just peel this up there. Snipped it with my trusty scissors, and then you just want to make sure that it's laid down flat. So you line up your tops and your bottoms, and if you find that you've got a little bit of leftover white, you can just snip that off, because that's just for guidelines. Just don't cut any of your image. To flip it, and just give yourself some extra support at the back. Just a little bit. So that when you flip it, it's not going to be so bad. There we go. And I'll do that to the other side as well. And there you go. You line it up. And tape it to secure it. And then you flip it over. And then you tape. I'm just going to use small amounts of tape because this is just for demonstration purposes. And I'm low on regular tape. So what you would do is you would tape all the way along. During editing, I realized that my video had cut out, so I'm going to do this final part just this way. So as I was saying, you lay your tape down. Okay, so I've got it, the overlap. And then I run my finger down the center line of the tape, and then also to where the paper overlaps, I also run my finger down that side as well. So you can feel it with your finger, and then you just run your fingernail along it like that. And I also use a spoon and run it across like that as well to give it a nice, smooth, flat as possible surface, so that when it's pressed, you can't see the press marks.